Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance, and this resistance video is sponsored by contribution from Anonymous, and this is a follow-up to The Rage of the Down Low Narc and Why You're There. This is episode 2. Hi, Ollie. Thank you so much for reading my last story. My complicated family situation has caused some confusion, so I'll explain it more specifically. When I was born, my mother was in her 20s, my father was in her 70s. Oh, somebody explained it to me already, so I know where I messed it up, but in case anybody else got it. When I was born, my mother was in her 20s, my father was in his 70s and already had adult children to his wife. He never divorced her. My father's youngest son is my mother's age, and he has a daughter who is a year older than me and a son who is a year younger. I am their aunt because their father is my half-brother. For the first 4 years of my life, they were pretty much the only children I had contact with. My half-brother also has 2 other sons who are in their teens and 20s. My niece, oldest nephew, and I are in our 30s. My other half-siblings have all passed away, and I never met them. Although I have a Spanish name, I am in fact white and from a Western country. According to my mother, my father named me after an old flame. Oh, that's great. That must have made your mother feel great. My mother and father were both white. My stepfather, who was 27 years older than my mother, was Polynesian. He died 10 years ago. My current stepfather is also Polynesian. My narc ex-husband is East Asian, is an East Asian national, and resides there. Okay, so what I would explain there, okay, even though you're white, you're still living in the area where that culture presides, so that's where it is. And with your name, that's why I thought, but now that makes sense. Okay. All right. This story covers my son husbanding narc niece and the hazardous Hoover from my ex. Thankfully, my daughter and I are in our own place in my country, and I'm finishing my degree, and she is thriving at preschool. Son husbanding narc. As I mentioned in my first story, my niece is a son husbanding narc. I stayed with her in her family home until my daughter was 1. I had a strong bond with my niece because we grew up together, and she offered me a place to stay with my new baby when my mother was not able to. At first, she love bombed me and showered me with praise. I was so happy to have company and ignorant of the narc tactics that I failed to see how toxic the environment was. She also triangulated me with her sister-in-law. Her 11-year-old son was still sleeping in her bed. Although my niece's mother, my sister-in-law, did not approve, she did not do anything to prevent it. My niece would make her son give her massages and make her coffee like a partner would. Get him trained early. I saw him try to grab her breast a couple times, which I do not think is normal behavior for a child that age. No, it's not. I don't know of any male friend I have that ever tried to grab his own mother's tits. I mean, come on, man. There's nothing normal about that. At 11? On one occasion, she was in the shower and asked her son to get her a bottle of shampoo when she could have asked me. Now, that's something my mother used to do. Shit. My mother used to call me in the shower. This is just what these deviants do. She would also set him up so there was no towel in the shower. So he would have to come out naked to get one. The first time this happened, I just looked down, but the second time I made an excuse and threw a towel through the door. She would tell him scary ghost stories before bed and have him crying, then offer him no empathy. She would blow hot and cold, 1 minute hugging him and the next minute telling him to piss off. She would expect him to maintain the diesel generator and blamed him when it nearly seized. She would bark commands at him when she wanted things to be done as if he were an animal. She would even be it instead of him when referring to him. I used to be called it a lot. At other times, call him her little man. I should mention that my niece has been extremely promiscuous in attempts and admits to having had a lesbian relationship. She always saw me as naive and overtly idealistic because I had dreams of getting married and creating a family. When I was staying with my niece, an old friend of my half-brothers came to stay with us at my older brother's farm, which is an isolated location with no police. He was married with 2 daughters in their 20s, and he was there because he had lost his job. At first, he seemed genuine and very much attached to his wife. However, one thing led to another, and my niece and him began having an affair. Naturally, I was made less and less welcome. I was so lonely as I was still very hurt about my breakup. Not knowing that narcs are incapable of change, I still clung on to the vain hope that somehow I could get through to him. I know now how toxic false hope is. When they were at the height of their affair, her son would call out to his mother, and she would ignore him, leaving him sobbing in pain. And this is what we get when the son-husbanding mother gets some side action. You know? It's like it's so sick, it's like she's cheating on her own son. And almost kind of rubbing it in his face, like making him jealous. Like an angry spouse would, or an angry girlfriend. Having her lover to back her embolden her abuse to new heights. She would put her foot on his chest and hold him down. Her commands got bolder and bossier. Things finally came to a head when she had been post-badgering her son all day, changing the goalpost. I know now these are typical narc tactics, and they are not to be expected when dealing with one of these demons. However, at the time, I was deeply emotionally incensed by the injustice. She said that she needed to do the dishes for punishment. I said no because the dishes were my job, and I thought her demands were unreasonable. Leading up to this incident, her lover had been creating an atmosphere of fear by using a tea towel as a whip and cracking it. She also had taken her son into the laundry and beaten him with a long wooden spoon. You know what this is? This is when the narcissistic son-husbanding mother divorces the son-husband. When the narcissistic mother divorces her son-husband. He ran off found somebody better, I guess, for a while. She still had this wooden spoon in her hand, and when I stood at the sink and refused to, and when I refused at the sink and refused to move, she came at me with it and threatened to hit me. When I refused to back down, she put her hand near the butcher knife on the bench, implying she would pick it up and stab me. When I still refused to move, I told her that I would tell her father. She got her lover to ask me to move. I said that I would wash the dishes instead of drying. I moved over and he took my niece's son to their room. My niece dried the dishes and scolded me for telling her how to raise her son. She said it was very rude, then criticized my dishwashing. I silently rewashed the dishes, she retorted. And as for telling my father, I don't think he'll really care. I finished wiping the bench and walked towards my room. Right on cue, my niece's son opened the door of his mother's room, and I saw the smirk on the face of my niece and her lover as they saw my expression of shock and terror. I packed my things so I could leave the following day. The next day, I secretly rang my younger nephew to pick me up. I stayed with him and his partner until I was able to get to the neighboring community, where I stayed in a small converted shed with not hot water or an inside toilet for a year. Hazardous Hoover from X. This house has been built by my mother, but on my latest stepfather's land. I was able to stay there rent-free and save some money. When the generator broke down, stepdad too did not get around to helping me fix it. I just made do with candles and lamps and an oil heater. During this time, I was able to use the community center and download audiobooks, which I listened to voraciously. One book I listened to was The Verbal Abusive Man, Can He Change? By Patricia Evans. It talked about the fact that if your partner does not recognize you as a separate person, it's impossible to have a mutually beneficial relationship. Also, that if he has not changed, the control and abuse will get worse if you go back. This information was a lifesaver. By this stage, I had been physically separated from my ex for over a year. Being at home with a young child without any proper family support was extremely lonely. In spite of all the abuse I had suffered, I still harbored fantasies of us getting back together and my daughter having the father figure I never had. In hindsight, I realized that this was abuse amnesia, where the brain tries to protect you from pain. I also had a very bad case of Stockholm Syndrome and the biochemical bond from hell that Self-Care Haven refers to. Back then, I was still under the spell that said everyone can change for the better. I thought if I just prayed hard enough, things would turn out right. Now, through listening to other YouTubers, especially R.E. Dossett, I have discovered that the Bible does tell us how narcs don't change. When my daughter was around 18 months old, my ex came to my country for a couple of weeks to see if we could work things out. Looking back at his behavior with knowledge and a clear head, I can see all his usual tactics were at play. It was just one big manipulative move. However, at the time, I was so desperate for love and companionship, I even let him back into my bed. At the time, it seemed exciting and passionate. However, now that I look back, it was cold, mechanical, and manipulative. My ex would ignore me in my own place. He raged at me when I confronted him on demanding that I leave at a certain time when there was no time pressure. He actually confessed that he has to be in control. After this visit, the trauma bond was reestablished. I was all ready to go back to East Asia with him, even organized passport photos for my daughter and I. However, I just did not feel peaceful about it in my spirit, so I decided to stay in my country and finish my degree. I am so glad I made that decision because he was wanting to have another baby as soon as I got back to his country without any acknowledgement of his past behavior. I now know that this was simply a trap. A few months after this visit, I decided to move to a bigger city where I have lived for the past year. My daughter is in preschool and thriving while I'm doing my degree. I have made considerable progress by watching YouTube videos and getting the validation I needed. However, I still struggle with executive function and generally organizing myself. I will send a story about this at a later date. Anonymous. Well, the first thing I'm going to say for the main thing is, yeah, look, your organization skills, your social maturity is what you need to work on. Your ability to get out and not be dependent on your family. And I think that's what you're working on. You know, you were so sheltered because you were so abused. You know, you have a lot of just social maturing to do on your own, and that's going to take time. But living in a big city on your own, doing this, is going to help you do that. Getting back to your niece, She was everything. Your niece was everything my mother was with the sexual, that sexual abuse, everything. Now, my mother was always violent. Always violent. But I have to admit, it did get worse after her ex-fiance came back into her life. You know, she was just, my mother was just such a son-husbanding deviant. You know, she could play both sides of it. What your niece did to her son when she got that boyfriend was she broke up with her son-husband. And she was cruel about it and mean about it, like a high school girl breaks up with her boyfriend. And when she starts dating somebody better. That's what she did. And wanted to rub her own kid's face in it. Even it's not her kid. That was her ex-son. That's her ex-son husband. Her ex-son boyfriend. It must be something with the narcissistic son-husbanding mother. If they do find somebody else that meets their fancy, they gotta, it's like when a mean high school girl breaks up with her boyfriend for somebody better and wants to rub his nose and shit. It's the same fucking behavior. It's identical. Because if a high school cheerleader, high school mean girl could pin you down and beat you up and do all that shit, she would. She would. Because the son-husbanding mother has such a physical advantage at that point, she was able to do stuff far worse. Far, far worse. It's alright. Because you know what that kid's in store for? Once this dude is done with her and this affair is over, she'll go right back to him and fuck him up even harder. I feel horrible for that boy. I feel horrible for that boy. His sexuality is probably fucking devastated by now. He doesn't know which end is up, and he's never ever gonna be normal. Never after this. He's never gonna have a normal fucking relationship with a woman. Never. And that's really the damage here. But what you experienced was when the narcissistic mother breaks up with her son-husband. So, thank you for part 2, Anonymous. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all you do, Anonymous, as well. Anonymous is actually quite an asset to us, so I appreciate. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. Wow, that one was that poor kid. And if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a narcissist you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up a Skype chat, a phone call, have a private video made, or a Facebook live chat, or you'd like to sponsor a video just like this for someone who can't afford it and needs help, or you just want to sponsor the channel in general, help keep the lights on, the rent paid, equipment, and just see the channel expand and grow, because this channel is funded 100% by contributions from all of you. I succeed or fail by you guys. So you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. And if you're still unclear, wait for the instructional video link to pop up on the screen at the end of this video to walk you through all of that. And if it's not popping up, check that you have your pop-up blocker off. Please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. Wow, this is really high def. Oh, a couple of you commented on the if I got a new camera. No, I didn't get a new camera. It's just upgraded my UCAM program. So, you know, that was a nice $19, good $19 I spent. And changed the resolution, and it looks good. I just hope I'm not using up too much hard drive. So, all right, guys, this has been the Narcissistic Resistance. See you soon.